Soldier is the ultimate generalist in TF2. His gunboats allow him to be the most mobile class in the game, and his shotguns turn him into arguably the best 1v1 mercenary to roam the Badlands. These playstyles are awesome, and I always appreciate having these soldiers on my team. But there is one type of soldier that I really wish I saw more of: the support soldier. It's hard to describe the satisfaction of your team fearlessly surging into the point, tanking random crits and headshots because screw you, I have a battalion's backup charge, and winning an otherwise unwinnable fight. That is exactly the utility that support soldier can provide to a team if you know how to play your cards right. Before I can get into any more detail, there are a few things left to cover. If it wasn't obvious at this point, when I say support soldier, I am referring to a soldier who is running a banner in their secondary slot. Any banner is viable in pubs, but the battalion's backup is the obvious star of the show. In fact, I would argue that the battalion's backup's game-winning potential is only trumped by Ubercharge and the Kritzkrieg charge. Let me explain my thought process. The buff banner is a decent choice. Just like the battalions, the buff banner requires 600 damage to charge, but its effect isn't nearly as useful. Sure, dealing 35% extra damage and having no damage falloff is great, but even when mini-crit boosted, you and your team are still vulnerable to all the things that might stop a push or break a hold. Snipers, soldiers, sticky spam, sentries, and scouts can still all kill you and your team frighteningly fast. Furthermore, the buff banner has no passive effects like the conch and the battalions. Its only effect is the mini-crits, which requires you to hit your shots, and more importantly, it requires your team to actually hit their shots to give your team value. In my experience, relying on your casual team to hit their shots in a short period of time in order to win is a pretty bad strategy. With all this being said, the buff banner is still a decent weapon, and it is very fun. My favorite aspect of the buff banner is using it with the direct hit. You can actually one-shot unbuffed light classes and even medics from across the map with the direct hit when it is mini-crit boosted. The conch is the second best banner. It only takes 400 damage to charge, and its slow health regen passive is actually pretty strong during fights. The health regeneration means that you are able to tank an extra hit from some classes. Demoman won't be able to 2-pipe kill you, and Sniper won't be able to body shot you and then headshot you, or vice versa. Of course, simply having passive health regen also just feels great. The conch's active ability is also quite strong, providing you and your team with health back on hit as well as a flat speed boost. Already this is arguably better than the buff banner since you do get a passive benefit in the form of the health regen as well as a speed boost on activation of the banner. However, your survivability still depends on you landing your rockets. If you don't deal damage, the conch will not give you any health back. Again, just like the buff banner, you are still able to die instantly to sniper, stickies, random crits, whatever. And speaking of random crits, well, just hang on, I have to finish talking about the conch before I can get to that. If you find yourself on a map with little health packs or on a team with no medics, the conch is still a solid option, especially when paired with the black box for the extra self-heal. The only reason I really switched to the conch is when my team is desperate for heals, since the battalions is on another level. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, if my team is really that desperate for heals, then I should probably just play medic instead of going conch. Okay, back to random crits. I really hate random crits.
Dude, that's so fucking dumb, man.
Dying to a random crit at full health, or at full buff even, is probably the most frustrating thing in this game. Nothing in TF2 is stupider than getting instantly deleted at 260 HP by a rocket that you couldn't have possibly reacted to from across the map that would have normally dealt only 50 damage.
I love random crits, dude. I love random crits. I love them so much. That's the stupidest
It should come as no surprise to you that my favorite aspect of the battalions is the crit resistance upon charge. If you look up satisfying in the dictionary, it will play this video of the Crockett dealing only 40 damage to me. Of course, the battalions also stops crits that aren't of the random variant. Kritzkriegs are invalidated, buff banner crits invalidated, direct hit airshots invalidated, a fan of war invalidated. I guess there aren't that many sources of crits, but this weapon stat is fantastic. Of course, the most important critical hit that the battalions prevents are sniper headshots. For 10 seconds, you and your nearby teammates are able to peek sniper sightlines. Emphasis on the nearby. The range for the battalions is relatively small, so you have to be careful of jumping too far away from your team while your banner is still active. Other than a hatred for sniper and random crits, there are other reasons to use the battalion's backup. It also provides a flat 35% resistance to all damage sources except for melee, and 50% damage reduction to sentry bullets while active. You might already know that this damage reduction is applied before the damage falloff is added, meaning that at long ranges, the damage reduction from the Battalion's charge is even more than 35%. Unlike both the buff banner and the Conjurer, the Battalion's charge is completely passive. For the Conch to heal you, you have to land your shots. For the buff banner to get any value, you have to land your shots. The Battalion's backup just applies your resistances, and you're golden. Speaking of passive buffs, the Battalion's also provides a passive 20 bonus health. This is good on its own since it means you can rocket jump once and land at a similar health if you had gunboats. This extra 20 HP also functions similar to the Conch's regen. It means you can survive 2 direct hit pipes, a headshot and a body shot, and the list goes on and on. Unlike the Conch's passive, and similar to many other aspects of this weapon, the Battalion's backup passively scales when getting heals from a medic. For example, an overheal becomes 330 HP instead of 300. To put it into perspective, a fully buffed Battalion soldier has more health than a heavy, and when his Battalions is active, he can tank even more than a fully buffed heavy given the right situation. Yeah, this weapon is crazy good. Again, the Battalion's backup scales with heals, since the more health you have, the more damage the other team will have to pour into you before you finally die. If you have a medic who is smart enough to realize this and heal you when your Battalion's backup is active, you are borderline unkillable as long as your team is with you. The Battalion's is great on its own, but like so many other things in TF2, its true potential can only be realized if it has a good team to back it up. Sometimes I am unable to achieve much even with the Battalion's charge simply because my team sucks. Other than the occasional lack of a good team, the Battalion's does have 2 glaring weaknesses. Firstly, if you have the Battalion's equipped, you don't have the shotgun, and more importantly, you don't have the gunboats. On some maps, the extra self-damage on rocket jumping doesn't really matter since you won't be rocket jumping much. The extra 20 health on the Battalions also helps negate the lack of gunboats damage resistance if you are doing a single rocket jump like I mentioned before. Furthermore, the 35% damage reduction does apply to your own rockets as well, so if your rage is active you can rocket jump freely. I should point out that not having the gunboats doesn't mean that you can't ever rocket jump, just that you will have to be more conservative and rocket jump less. Soldiers' walking speed is very slow, which is why I usually run the disciplinary action when I have a banner equipped. The other main weakness of the Battalions is that spies completely counter its charge. A backstab will still instantly kill you and your teammates, so you still have to be aware of spy when you're using the banner. Okay, so the banners are great. How come people don't use them more often? Well, all the banners require you to build up the charge before you can actually use them. I suspect the reason banners are rare is because of this. Many players might not be able to stay alive for long enough to consistently build their rage meter. The solution to this is simply smart positional play. I've already made an entire video talking about positioning as a soldier, but a brief description for those who have not seen it. Play the high ground when possible, but don't be afraid to give it up if it means surviving. Holding choke points and taking fights when your opponent is in a choke point is ideal. And lastly, play around health packs. Again, this is a very brief oversimplification, and the correct play will vary based on the game you are in. With these fundamentals in mind, I usually adopt a more passive spam-oriented role on my team when I'm running banner. I typically hold back in a good position and play to get easy spam damage in to slowly build my banner. Since long-range rockets deal little damage, this is typically much slower than getting aggressive, but if you die, you lose all your banner charge. If you feel like you can get away with playing in a more forward position without dying, then you should, since you will build rage much faster. I typically do this if I have a medic who is buffing me frequently or giving me a lot of heals. The lack of gunboats is largely mitigated in this situation, and due to the Battalion's passive health buff, I am even tankier than usual. When running a banner, you don't even need to secure kills to be getting value as long as you are dealing damage and getting to use your rage, especially on defense. Generally speaking, you want to be permanently alive as a support soldier since when you are dead, you can't be building your banner. A Battalion's charge can quite literally be game-winning, similar to Uber or crits. For this reason, I focus more on staying alive with the Battalions equipped, and I find myself going on more kill streaks than usual. On defense, this playstyle is natural since on most maps the defending team has a positional advantage and the other team has to come to you to complete the objective. For this reason, I find myself running a banner more often on the red team. If you're attacking, the backpacks are certainly still viable, you might just need to get more creative in order to safely build your banner. Sometimes I find it is most effective to simply hold a choke point and wait for the defenders to overextend. The last thing I should mention is that using a resupply bind will reset your rage meter to 0. If you want to resupply, you will have to touch the cabinet to avoid losing your rage. Once your rage meter is fully charged, you have to actually activate it. Finding the best time to use your banner can be challenging because blowing it plays an animation that can't be cancelled, during which you are unable to shoot. If I am positioned aggressively when I get the charge, I typically back up to a more passive position to pop it. Oftentimes when I get full charge, I am in the middle of a firefight, and in these situations I will typically finish the fight if I'm winning, making sure to clean up on any kills as long as I am safe. If I am unsafe, or if I'm losing the fight, I'll try to back up to use my banner in order to recommit and win the fight. Before I pop my banner, I typically look around and make sure I have teammates around me to support me as I'm locked in an animation, as well as to benefit from the banner. I also check that there are no immediate threats, because if you aren't careful, you can get pushed when you are locked in the animation and you will be unable to fight back. Speaking of the banner animation, you can continue holding the left click to hold onto the banner. The effect will be activated when you release the click. This can be useful if you're expecting the other team to kritzkrieg in, or maybe you are hanging onto the banner on defense waiting for the blue team's push. So, when is it a good time to use your banner? Well, it depends on the banner that you're using. They're all somewhat similar, and like I mentioned earlier, the Battalion's backup is easily the strongest, so I will be mainly focusing on that. The best time to use Battalions is when your team is going to be taking the most damage, during a team fight. On offense, this is a somewhat easy timing to get the hang of, since as the offensive team, you will typically have the initiative. On the red team, you can use your banner offensively, similar to how you would on blue team in order to retake lost space. You can also use it to react to blue team's push, either forcing them to postpone their offensive or giving your team a massive advantage. It can sometimes be very difficult to tell when a teamfight will occur, since there is almost never any sort of useful communication in casual lobbies. This is something that you will just develop a sense for over time. In my experience, it is better to use the banner earlier rather than later. It feels similar to Ubercharge, where it's usually better to pop it than drop it. Teamfights are arguably the most effective time to use your banner, since the most number of players will be receiving the benefits. You can also use it a bit more selfishly. I find the Battalions works really well when I'm getting kritzkrieg. Since the crits doesn't give you invulnerability, it isn't uncommon to die mid-charge. The Battalions prevents you from insta-dying to sniper, and it even synergizes further because the crit rockets can help you build the banner back. I've found that the best timing for this combo is to pop the banner and then crits a second or two afterwards. This way, the banner protects you for most of the crits, but you have time to get a few rockets off to recharge it. Sometimes, the other team will try to stage a push after the crits and banner expire, and they are met with the 2nd Battalion's charge. The last situation I find myself popping my banner in frequently is when I'm in a pinch, and the extra damage resistance might help me survive. This is probably the least effective of the 3 typical situations, but if I'm likely to die anyways, I might as well help any nearby teammates with my literal dying breath. That being said, the Battalion's backup is so good that sometimes you can survive a situation that you never would have gotten away with just because of the extra damage resistance. The last aspect of Support Soldier is your melee choice. I would say that Soldier has 2 viable melee options when running banner: the escape plan and the disciplinary action. The escape plan shines because it's the escape plan. It's pretty much always good because you're guaranteed movement speed even when you don't have enough health to rocket jump. Furthermore, it synergizes with the Battalions because the crit resistance negates the only downside of the escape plan, which is the marked on death when active. I have personally been using the whip since it helps me support my team even more by helping slower classes roll out to the front lines quicker. The disciplinary action also allows me to roll out more quickly while maintaining a crit heal for when I get to the front. Of course, rocket jumping is still faster, but without the gunboats, the cost of doing 2 or 3 rocket jumps to get to the front line is usually not worth it. The main downside of the whip is that you require a teammate nearby for it to be useful. Even if you have a teammate with you, that teammate might not notice that you are trying to get a speed boost from them and just walk away from you. For these reasons, the whip is situationally better or worse than the pickaxe, which is always going to be reliable. As always with Soldier, who has a ton of fantastic unlocks, the choice is really personal preference. I suppose you could even use the Market Gardener if you really wanted, even though without the gunboats it's pretty subpar. With all that being said, that pretty much covers Support Soldier. Soldier with a banner is, in my opinion, the most mechanically simple way to help your team, with the exception of Medic and Engineer. Hopefully this guide was helpful to you, and I hope you enjoyed the video.
You're fat. You're fatty. You're sitting at one of our spawns right now, just like cloaked. Where are you? Where are
Oh my
you?
god, Panther, you're so good.
Where are
What?
you?
What did I do?
Wait!
There's a gun there! What the fuck?
I actually just got jumped.